Jonathan, please.
Thank you, committee members, for having us here. So, the housing crisis is a housing shortage. For decades, we have failed to build enough homes across Victoria, and especially in the most productive and sought-after places in our cities and settlements. The sum total of this has been to make us all poorer. Wealth increases, sure, as a function of house prices, but to what end? High house prices simply allow incumbent homeowners to sell their expensive houses and buy another expensive house. These high prices lock younger people out of the market. They consume our nation's earnings, displace our productivity, and drive families further and further out of our cities, displacing agricultural and biodiverse land on our cities' fringes for the sake of an endless horizon of suburban sprawl. Only now are we reversing course. Only now are we reckoning with our past mistakes. If there is one thing to take away from our submission to this inquiry and our presentation today, it's that these reforms are not radical. The Planning Institute yesterday stated for all to hear that they would prefer conservatism. And suddenly, these reforms are not conservative, but they are also not radical. As detailed in our submission, deemed to comply controls and third-party appeal exemptions are in operation across Victoria already. They operate more broadly in South Australia, Queensland, and the ACT. In Western Australia, third-party appeals do not even exist as part of the planning system, and yet no cataclysm, as far as we know, has come to the folks out west. By national standards, Victoria has an outsized number of opportunities for third-party appeal. We detail this in our submission, and we detail the impacts of this in our submission. What Victoria doesn't have is an outsized number of homes for people to rent, buy, and live in. Consider the National Construction Code, a far more important tool for ensuring health, safety, and well-being of all Australians than any jurisdictional planning code could hope to be. The Construction Code is deemed to comply. It doesn't rely on third-party appeals by a small minority of noisemakers for its operation. A building's plans are submitted. Those plans are safe, then the building can be built. After inspection, it can be lived in. The same is true for planning across many places across Australia and the world. If the homes comply, then they can be built. Then they can be lived in. This is not radical. What is radical is that for decades we have made it more and more difficult to build homes in this state, not just for the public sector, the private sector, but for the public sector too. Homes Victoria, Development Victoria, community housing providers, all of these people fight the planning system every single day. The overarching story of planning in this state is government getting in its own way. And the results of this radicalism are all around us. The results are people homeless on the streets, rental inspections with lines wrapped around the block, and median home prices sitting at 9.8 times median income, 7th most expensive in the world. Members of committee, it's simple. Making it easier to build homes is an act of good and effective government. There is an old school conception of government, that it should exist merely as a rule maker, that you, our elected representatives, should be no more ambitious than a referee tasked with sitting on the sidelines and calling fouls. Occasionally, you might get to add a few new rules. You might get to call a few new fouls. But over time, those rules and fouls add up, and the game will slow to a halt. Well, the housing game has well and truly slowed, and now here we are in this inquiry. There is an antidote to this slowdown. It can be found in a more contemporary conceptualization of government. That is, the state as an enabler, a government that doesn't settle for merely making rules and calling fouls, but getting off the chair, waxing the court, coordinating the teams, and removing the bottlenecks to the action. To wrap up the metaphor, a better government makes a better game, and this starts with the understanding of everyone on the committee and everyone in government on either side to understand that we need more homes. It then continues to ask, how can you coordinate the population, the individuals, the firms, the institutions, to work together to get these homes built as fast as possible for as many Victorians as possible? The evidence you heard from industry and experts yesterday, from the Property Council to Ahuri, told you that this policy will make the work of building homes easier. That is your role as good government. We at YIMBY Melbourne believe in a government that does things, that cares about the substance of the outcomes it enables rather than the rules it writes down, that cares about the number of actual, real homes delivered for actual, real Victorians, so much more than a set of outdated rules created by the last generation of legacy planners. These reforms correct so many of our past errors. This is not deregulation, it is re-regulation. In many ways, a number of these reforms create more rigid and binding rules than those previously on the books, which were fuzzy and discretionary strictures about heights and character that turn planners into a judiciary of vibes, encouraging speculation and horse trading at every stage of the home building process. Support for these reforms, ladies and gentlemen, is broad. 94% of a representative sample of Australians who were consulted and polled in February of this year indicated that they supported more density around train stations, that they supported more density across our cities. That's a representative sample across demographics, education, states, cities, regions, political parties. It is a much higher standard of consultation than typically takes place within the planning field, which mostly consists of a small huddle of self-selecting individuals who tend to be older and wealthier and whiter than the general Victorian and Australian population. Study after study shows that these are not representative processes. They are biased. They are biased against poorer people, against younger families, against renters, and they are the most important stakeholder in any housing project, which is the people who want to live somewhere but can't, because there simply aren't enough homes. Members of the committee, these are the people for whom these reforms will matter most. These are the Victorians whose futures are most at stake. One role of good government is to fight for those who need fighting for. That is also the role of YIMBY Melbourne, and that is why we are here today. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Excellent.